Sports utility vehicles, or more commonly known as SUVs, when they were first introduced, the whole idea was that they were going to be more practical than hatchbacks. They were going to offer more interior space, better ride height, they were going to have more ground clearance and be better at off-roading. But nowadays, SUVs aren't really all that more practical than hatchbacks, and in some cases, the hatchback is the more practical option. If you're looking for a four-wheel drive SUV, you're pretty limited in your choices, and most of the time you'll find yourself having to go for the absolute top specification to get that four-wheel drive option. But there's one brand who do off-roading at their core, and that's Subaru. We don't really hear much about Subaru in the UK. This is the Subaru Crosstrek, and it comes as standard with four-wheel drive. If you've never heard about it, then neither had I until I did this video. But if you're in the market for a four-wheel drive SUV, this could be one to add to your list. Hi guys, I'm Tish and welcome back to my channel Auto Social UK. In today's video, I'll tell you everything you need to know about the Subaru Crosstrek, all my favourite and not so favourite things about it. So if that sounds good, then please keep watching. And if you like new car reviews and car content, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So let's begin by talking about the styling of the Crosstrek. This is the top specification car, but actually they only come in two specifications. Going for this specification means that you get black door mirrors and you also get some larger alloy wheels. But in terms of styling, I think it's a pretty good looking car. I love the colour with the contrasting elements, and it really does that off-roading style very well. You've got some really chunky front cladding and you've got chunky cladding all over the wheels. It looks pretty capable, and that's because this car is pretty capable. This is an SUV which can actually do some decent off-roading, which I'll talk a bit more about later on in the video. I really like the two-tone alloy wheels, and I also really like these lights at the front, which are almost 3D. They come out a little bit further. It's just a pretty stylish looking car. It reminds me a lot of a Volvo V40, and I keep talking about SUV, but actually it kind of blurs the lines between a few different types of vehicle: crossover, estate. It sits somewhere in between them all. And when it comes to rear design, it shares a lot of those elements with the front. There's a lot of rugged features on this car which hint at its off-roading capabilities. I really like this bottom bumper, finished in this textured plastic. You've got those fins which give it an almost sporty feel. I also really like these 3D lights which hug the shoulders of the car. Now, despite resembling a Volvo V40, unfortunately it can't hold a candle to that car's boot space. Inside of this boot you'll find 315 litres, which is a little bit disappointing. Now, it may be the fact that it looks like it would be nice and deep in there, but actually because of the hybrid electrification it eats into the boot space. So pretty much what you see is what you get, but luckily what you also get is quite a thoughtful and practical space despite being slightly smaller than expected. One of my favourite elements is this, the plastic boot lip cover. This reads Crosstrek across it and it looks quite funky, but also it's super practical because if you've got dogs, they're not going to scratch up that lovely blue paintwork. This car in particular has been showcased exactly how it can be perfect for dogs because you've got a boot liner which covers the boot floor and also the rear seats. This car also comes with a retractable parcel shelf as standard. So if you do have animals in the back, you don't need to remove the parcel shelf and find somewhere to store it. You can just leave it inside of there. So whilst it might not be the biggest, it definitely has some practical elements which are key selling points. Now let's check out the interior. Inside of this cabin, Subaru have done a really good job at adding modern elements into a vehicle while still making it feel refreshingly old school. It feels much more like an older vehicle, and I mean that in the nicest way possible. It feels familiar and comforting. It doesn't feel like there's loads of modern technology which is shouting at me as soon as I get in. Everything feels just really old school in the way that it's all tunneled towards me. You've got this lovely, really nice chunky steering wheel, massive armrest, leather seats. All of that definitely feels quite a far throw from some of the vehicles that we're currently seeing on the market. In terms of this touchscreen, It's not the best system out there. At first, it looks very, very large in a portrait orientation. But actually, when you turn it on, it is only in the centre of this screen. But that's no bad thing because it means you get some physical buttons down the sides for turning up and turning down the temperature of your climate control. Although, a lot of the climate control is inside of the touchscreen, and I know maybe that's a bit disappointing compared to the rest of the car, which feels so kind of methodical in the way that there's loads of buttons and switches. That's all lovely, but you do still have these physical buttons here, and as soon as you press those, you get the shortcut for your climate along the bottom, and then you can just turn up your fans. So I think it's pretty easy to use. Not as good as having dials, but then again, not many cars nowadays do have physical dials anymore. On this screen at the moment, I'm running my Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is also wireless, but the home screen is a little bit more disappointing in its graphics. It does just feel a little bit outdated, although there's everything on there that you need. Your Bluetooth, apps, your map, everything works quite well as well, and there's not really any lagging on the screen, which I was expecting when I first saw this touchscreen. The layout, as I mentioned, is really nice, and I also like the quality as well. It feels quite tactile and quite rugged in this cabin. You can tell this is set up to be a four-wheel drive car because you've got quite a lot of plastics around the cabin, but they're nice plastics and they're also easy to clean, and I think that's the key to this cabin. The seats as well, all of this is going to clean really, really easily, even if you get it a little bit muddy. Now on this top spec model, you get this really nice carbon effect across the doors and also all the way behind the steering wheel and across the top of the dashboard. That's really nice. And as I mentioned, loads of buttons on the steering wheel. You've got your adaptive cruise control, all of your volume controls, and if you go for this high spec model, you also get paddles behind the steering wheel to control the gear selector, which you may need because this is a CVT system and it can be a bit laggy at times. So to have the paddles are definitely a huge bonus. Like I mentioned, you've got a lovely big armrest and there's tons of storage inside there. You've got two cup holders, you've got buttons for your heated seats, which once again feel nice and old school, and you've also got some storage up front which will fit your mobile phone. No wireless charging unfortunately, but you do have USB, USB-C and an aux lead. So if you want to play an aux, you actually can. You've also got plenty of storage in the doors, enough for a big bottle, and also there's quite a lot of storage inside the glove box. There's a massive book pack inside of there. I really like it, and lastly you've got a semi-digital display in front of the driver, so it still feels like you've got those really nice old school dials that feel really familiar, but also it's digitalised in a sense that you have a little centre screen and it all lights up and it looks very nice. There's not particularly anything I dislike. I would have liked a more modern system when it comes to the CarPlay and this central touchscreen, but really I think the target audience of this car are not going to be too fussed about what's on that screen. What they are going to be bothered about is its off-roading capabilities. What sets the Crosstrek aside from other family SUV competitors is its authentic off-road capability, with impressive ground clearance of 220mm and standard symmetrical all-wheel drive mode. There's also a drive mode called X mode, which enhances this permanent all-wheel drive system for navigating challenging surfaces at lower speeds, and this is complete with hill descent control as well. Remarkably, it can handle pretty tough terrain at ease and even fitted with the standard road tyres. Now, I don't often do that many looks underneath the bonnets of cars, and you guys don't seem to mind that, but it kind of felt illegal to film a Subaru and not look at what's going on underneath this bonnet. Subaru are possibly one of those brands who have gone kicking and screaming into electrification. But let's face it, with stricter EU laws, if you want to survive in the UK and the rest of Europe, you have to have some kind of electrification. And that's why we've got an e-Boxer engine. So it's a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine with around 140 brake horsepower. And that has some hybrid electrification. It's a self-charging hybrid, so in my opinion, one of the best if you're doing a lot of driving. Despite the hybrid engine, the vehicle achieves a maximum fuel efficiency of only 36.8 miles per gallon, and that's pretty much down to the all-wheel drive system. I was able to achieve a little bit over that on a mixed drive. Every Subaru Crosstrek is equipped with that 134 brake horsepower 2-litre petrol mild hybrid engine, which delivers adequate power for daily driving needs. However, it doesn't feel particularly swift, with official acceleration figures indicating that 0 to 62 miles per hour will take 10.8 seconds. That's slower than the base models of the Kia Sportage and the Nissan Qashqai. This sluggishness is particularly noticeable at lower speeds, where competitors with turbocharged engines respond more eagerly. In the hybrid category, this model is a little bit on the mild side, offering only brief moments of electric assistant at really low speeds. The CVT automatic transmission. I'm going to have to talk about it, and it doesn't improve the situation. Although it features simulated gears that can be navigated using the paddles behind the steering wheel, it's best utilised in automatic mode, where it generally maintains a smooth driving experience. However, like many other CVT systems, the engine does tend to rev loudly during heavy acceleration, and the gearbox can feel a bit jerky when accelerating and decelerating in urban settings. On the plus side, however, the Crosstrek handles corners really well, and it's a very comfortable ride. Unfortunately, it's the same story in the back as it is in the boot. It's smaller than you may first expect because, once again, you've got a lot of ground clearance, and a lot of the four-wheel drive and hybrid systems are underneath this rear bench, and that means you sit up quite high, and that eats into a lot of headroom, especially on this model which has the sunroof. But it does have its pros, and those pros to me are the fact that you have a really good view out of the windscreen. So if you've got children who are prone to car sickness, this is going to help. And also, you can see right out of the windows as well, which you can't in many other SUVs. In terms of amenities, you've got ISOFIX fitments on both of the outer seats, but none on the front passenger seat, which is disappointing. You've got a pull-out armrest with a couple of cup holders and little spongy bits to hold the cups in place. You've also got a USB and a USB-C charger, so it's nice to have the choice. And you've also got a pocket on this rear seat, but you haven't got a pocket on the other driver's seat. You haven't got any rear air vents or anything like that, and that to me is a bit disappointing for this class of car. There's also not a bench which slides back or forth, or you can't change how reclined you are on these rear seats. So it certainly could be more practical, but then again, it does the job. Getting comfortable in the Crosstrek couldn't be easier thanks to the extensive adjustments of both the steering wheel and the seats. You actually sit up really high, and if you opt for the high-end touring trim, which is this one, the seat adjustments are electric and they feature adjustable lumbar support as well. The elevated driving position provides a really good view out onto the road and the bonnet ahead. Rear visibility is equally impressive, with large windows and cutouts in the rear pillars that enhance your ability to see over your shoulder, making parking a straightforward task. But this is further aided by the fact that you do get a rear view camera as standard. Pricing for the Subaru Crosstrek starts from £34,345, which is by no means cheap. However, nowadays, if you wanted a four-wheel drive Skoda Karoq, diesel is your only option, and that will cost you a further £5,000 compared to the Subaru. Your cheapest option for going four-wheel drive would be the Suzuki S-Cross, starting at just under £31,500. However, Suzuki's all-grip system is nowhere as capable as the Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive, and certainly feels cheaper in some areas. So it's clear that the Subaru Crosstrek isn't the most modern vehicle within its class, but you know what? I think that's a little bit of its charm. This car is going to appeal to people who aren't quite ready to go to all these brand new cars with all their gadgets and gizmos and massive screens and plug-ins and electrification. They just want simplicity. and also practicality. They want to know that if they need to go off-road, they can. And if they want to nip to the shops in snow, it's going to have their back. And for those people, I think the Crosstrek is a great option. But let me know, if you were looking for a four-wheel drive SUV, what would be your car of choice? Pop it in the comments down below. I really hope you have enjoyed this video today, guys. If you have, go ahead and give it a massive thumbs up. And if you want to see more, then hit that subscribe button. Until next time, see you later.